Adolf Hitler was born in Braunau am Inn, Austria, on April 20th, 1889. His early life was marked by a strained relationship with his father and a close bond with his mother. He moved to Vienna in 1907, where he was twice rejected by the Academy of Fine Arts. He developed a deep-seated anti-Semitism, blaming Jews for his personal failures and societal problems. This period laid the foundation for his future political career. At the outbreak of World War I, Hitler volunteered for the German army. He served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front. He was awarded the Iron Cross for bravery. After Germany's defeat, Hitler felt betrayed by the Treaty of Versailles. In 1919, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party. He quickly rose through the ranks, becoming its leader in 1921. His powerful oratory skills attracted a growing following. The early 1920s saw the Nazi Party gain momentum, capitalizing on economic instability and social unrest. Hitler's fiery speeches and promises of national revival resonated with a growing number of Germans. The party's paramilitary wing, the SA, intimidated political opponents and enforced party discipline. In November 1923, Hitler attempted to seize power in Munich in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. The coup failed, and Hitler was arrested and sentenced to prison. While incarcerated, he wrote Mein Kampf, outlining his political ideology and plans for Germany's future. Despite the setback, the Beer Hall Putsch brought Hitler national attention. His trial provided a platform to disseminate his views and gain further support. He used his time in prison to refine his political strategy and consolidate his control over the Nazi Party. Mein Kampf became a cornerstone of Nazi ideology, espousing anti-Semitism, racial supremacy, and the need for territorial expansion. The book's popularity further fueled the growth of the Nazi Party and cemented Hitler's status as a prominent political figure. The Great Depression of the 1930s provided fertile ground for the Nazi Party's rise. Mass unemployment and economic hardship fueled public discontent with the Weimar Republic. Hitler capitalized on this desperation, promising economic recovery and national renewal. The Nazi Party's message of national unity and racial purity resonated with a population seeking stability and scapegoats. Hitler skillfully used propaganda to demonize Jews and other minority groups, blaming them for Germany's problems. His speeches offered a sense of hope and purpose in a time of despair. Through effective campaigning and manipulation of public fears, the Nazis gained significant electoral success. They became the largest party in the Reichstag in 1932, although they did not hold an absolute majority. Hitler's relentless ambition and political maneuvering brought him closer to power. In January 1933, President Paul von Hindenburg appointed Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. This appointment marked a turning point in German history, paving the way for the establishment of a totalitarian regime and the horrors that would follow. Section 5. Consolidation of power and the totalitarian state. Once in power, Hitler moved quickly to consolidate his control and eliminate opposition. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 provided a pretext for suppressing political opponents and enacting the Enabling Act, which granted Hitler dictatorial powers. With the Enabling Act in place, Hitler systematically dismantled democratic institutions and established a one-party state. He outlawed other political parties, suppressed freedom of speech and assembly, and established a vast network of surveillance and control. The Nazi regime used propaganda and terror to maintain its grip on power. The Gestapo, the secret police, arrested and tortured anyone suspected of dissent. Concentration camps were established to imprison political opponents and undesirables. Hitler's regime transformed Germany into a totalitarian state, controlling all aspects of life, from politics and economics to culture and education. Individual freedoms were extinguished, and the state became the supreme authority. Section 6. The outbreak of World War II and early victories. Hitler's foreign policy aimed to restore German greatness and expand its territory. He violated the Treaty of Versailles by rearming Germany and annexing Austria in 1938. He then set his sights on Czechoslovakia, demanding the Sudetenland region. The Munich Agreement in 1938, in which Britain and France appeased Hitler by ceding the Sudetenland, emboldened him further. He invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia in 1939, demonstrating his disregard for international agreements. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, triggering World War II. Hitler's blitzkrieg tactics, involving rapid armored advances and air support, overwhelmed Polish defenses. France and Britain declared war on Germany, but initially remained on the defensive. In 1940, Germany launched a swift and successful offensive against France, capturing Paris and forcing the French to surrender. Hitler's early military victories seemed to confirm his claims of German superiority and fueled his ambitions for world domination. Section 7. The turning point of the war and the Eastern Front. Hitler's decision to invade the Soviet Union in 1941 marked a turning point in the war. Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, initially achieved significant gains. However, the vastness of the Soviet Union and the fierce resistance of the Red Army began to take its toll. The Battle of Stalingrad, a brutal 6-month siege, became a symbol of Soviet resilience and German overreach. The German defeat at Stalingrad in 1943 marked a major turning point in the war on the Eastern Front. The Red Army began to push the Germans back. The Eastern Front became a war of attrition, consuming vast resources and claiming millions of lives. The brutal conditions and the ferocity of the fighting exposed the limitations of the German war machine. The Eastern Front became the primary theater of the war, diverting German resources and manpower from other fronts. The heavy losses suffered by the German army contributed significantly to its eventual defeat. Section 8. The Holocaust, Systematic Persecution and Extermination. Alongside the military campaigns, the Nazi regime implemented the Holocaust, a systematic program of persecution and extermination of Jews and other minority groups. Hitler's anti-Semitism, outlined in Mein Kampf, became state policy. Jews were stripped of their rights, their property confiscated and forced into ghettos. Concentration camps, initially established for political prisoners, evolved into centers of mass murder. Millions of Jews were transported to extermination camps like Auschwitz-Birkenau. The Nazis used gas chambers and other methods to systematically murder Jews and other victims of the Holocaust. The scale and brutality of the Holocaust are unparalleled in human history. The Holocaust represents one of the darkest chapters in human history, a testament to the horrors of racism and totalitarian ideology. The world grapples with the legacy of the Holocaust to this day. Section 9. The Decline and Fall of the Third Reich. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler's grip on power began to weaken. The Allied advances on multiple fronts and the increasing resistance within Germany signaled the impending collapse of the Third Reich. The failed assassination attempt on Hitler in July 1944, known as the July 20th plot, led to a brutal crackdown on any perceived opposition. Hitler became increasingly isolated and paranoid, relying on a shrinking circle of advisors. The Allied bombing campaign devastated German cities and infrastructure, further weakening the war effort. The Red Army advanced into Germany from the east, while the Western Allies pushed from the west, closing in on Berlin. Hitler's refusal to accept defeat and his insistence on fighting to the bitter end prolonged the war and resulted in further loss of life. The German people suffered immensely as the war reached its devastating conclusion. Section 10. Hitler's Final Days and Suicide. As Soviet troops entered Berlin in April 1945, Hitler retreated to his underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. He married his longtime mistress, Eva Braun, in a brief ceremony. He dictated his last will and testament, blaming the Jews for the war and urging the German people to continue the struggle. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler committed suicide by shooting himself while Eva Braun took cyanide. Their bodies were burned in the Chancellery garden to prevent them from falling into Soviet hands. The suicide marked the end of Hitler's reign of terror. Hitler's death brought an end to the war in Europe, although fighting continued in the Pacific against Japan. The world began the long process of rebuilding and coming to terms with the devastation of World War II. The circumstances of Hitler's death and the disposal of his remains have been the subject of much speculation and historical debate. The event marked the definitive end of the Nazi regime. Section 11. The lasting legacy of Hitler's regime. Hitler's actions left an indelible mark on world history. The Holocaust is a chilling reminder of the horrors of racism and genocide. The war resulted in tens of millions of deaths and devastated Europe. The world learned the dangers of totalitarian ideologies and the importance of democracy. The legacy led to the creation of international organizations like the United Nations. The rise and fall of Hitler remind us of the fragility of peace and the consequences of unchecked power.